Last week, we took a look at a 1972 D18 that was fully modified and compared it to a D18 1939 Authentic. And so what we were looking at there was kind of like the epitome of what Martin can do with a modern guitar. So the 1939 Authentic is as good as it gets in a modern D18. How good or how does a modified 1972 D18 compare to that? Now, I fully expected the Authentic to be a better guitar. I mean, it should be. It costs twice as much. It's got all the right construction in it. The 72 D18 has got all the wrong construction, and what's happened is I have tried to modify it to bring it up closer to what the 39 might be. I've tried to bring it up and improve it. So, a lot of comments were like, oh, well, the 39 blows it away. Well, I kind of expected it to, but I thought the 72 D18 put up a pretty good fight for a guitar that used to be a dog and, played out of tune. It was just horrible sounding guitar. So we're going to do the same thing today. We're going to look at a 1973 D28, which is fully modified, and we're going to compare it with a D28 1941 Authentic, which is completely stock in this case. And boy, look at the difference in color here. This one's got that orange Sitka top to it, and this has got the yellow Adirondack spruce top. I'm not going to go into all the details on the guitars here, the differences right now. We're going to play them first, and then I want you to listen to it, and then I'm going to come back and point out some things that you should probably look for in each guitar. And when I do that, I'll talk about the differences and the construction and that kind of thing. But for now, let's just play them and listen to them and see what you think about them, It's never really a better or worse comparison. This is the thing that people don't seem to get about my comparisons. It's not really saying this one is better and this one is worse. It's simply saying which sound do you like better. So therefore, I can compare two guitars that are dissimilar, that are not the same guitar, that have different back and side woods, different top woods, different things like that. That's fine. What I'm looking at is which one do you like better? Do you like this sound or do you like this sound? Because to me, there's not a better or worse necessarily. This one's got its purpose, and this one's got its purpose too. So I like to have these kind of videos as a tool for my customers to listen to, and they can say, yeah, I definitely like that sound. And in fact, if you were to like the Authentic and say, oh, it just blows the 70s away, well, we're never going to get your 70s there, so, maybe you need to be buying another guitar. But if you say, well, that 70s has got something going for it there, I like this part of the sound, maybe we can work with that. So that's the purpose of the comparison. So I'm going to put these two guitars down before I drop them. And we're going to start with the 73, which has fresh strings on it because I just finished the video on that the other day. So let me get it tuned, and then we're going to be back. And I will play my standard set of licks, and then I'm going to talk about the guitars, and I'm going to play some things, and I'm going to point out some things specifically. But I'm going to play my standard set of licks so that you can have a direct A-B comparison, and then I'm going to spend some time just talking about them. Let's talk about the 73 through 28 first. And I've noticed a lot of times when people pick up my videos, they're new viewers. In fact, half the people watching this video are going to be a new viewer that don't subscribe to my channel, haven't followed me, haven't seen anything, don't know anything about me, don't know anything about what I do. So 70s D Martins have a lot of issues that really hold them back. They have heavy tuners. The bridge is usually out of location. It's usually about an eighth, almost a quarter of an inch out of position, too far forward. Therefore, it'll never play in tune. They have a big, massive Indian rosewood bridge plate under here, which is about that big from front to back. Pre-war bridge plate would be about this big, made out of maple. Indian rosewood is just a really dull-sounding wood, especially for the bridge plate. In the 70s, Indian rosewood on the back and sides is pretty good stuff. It's got a fairly good bright tap tone, but on a bridge plate, it's just not as good as maple could be. So I fix that. They have non-scallop braces. I scallop them. And they have a square, hollow metal truss rod, which is strong, but the problem is it's metal. So if you hit the thing in the middle of the neck, it produces a metallic ring that focuses down into the body of the guitar and amplifies this metallic ring. So I fix a lot of these things, okay? So the first thing I do is I get rid of the tuners, and I put open back tuners on there to get the guitar a lot lighter. I mean, open back tuners weigh about half of what Grover Rotomatics do. And getting rid of the big metal bushings on the front, there's a lot of that weight. So I do that. I generally do a nut, which is to the kind of spacing that I like, which is equal spacing in between the strings. And I just do the nut because I'm usually doing the frets in order to get the relief where I want it. I usually am doing a neck reset, and I would put the neck back on with fish glue, which is an animal protein glue. And then I plug this hollow metal truss rod with a dowel and smear it with epoxy, put epoxy in there, and put the dowel in there, and twist it all around. And I epoxy a wooden dowel in there to kill that metallic resonance. And it might add a little bit of strength to the neck. I think that's minimal because the truss rod's pretty strong. But anyways, I take care of that. I do neck reset. I take the popsicle brace out that's under here. Pre-war Martins didn't have that. I put a trapezoid brace in here instead, which is much stronger, and it's how you fix problems in here. Scallop the braces, and on 70s, I typically only scallop the X brace right here. I typically don't scallop the tone bars. When you scallop the tone bars, you get a woofy sound, and I don't necessarily want that out of a 70. I just want to get rid of the nasally bass sound that they tend to have. You get a lot of that by replacing the bridge plate and letting the top go a little bit more, but you can get a little bit more by scalloping the two X braces. So I do that. I scoot the bridge back. I prepare the finish in front of it, and I put a small bridge plate in here. This particular 328 has a hot rosewood bridge plate. So Indian rosewood is dull. It's got a dull tap tone. And this one's got either Southeast Asian or Amazon rosewood. I can't remember which. I'll have to look inside of it. But either way, it's small. It barely extends past the bridge. And the Southeast Asian and Amazon both have a really really nice, bright tone to them. And that hot rosewood plate is something that I kind of model after the very early 60s Martins, and they will have a small, for a couple of years, they'll have a small Brazilian rosewood bridge plate, which I think is pretty good, you know. I just started doing it to play around with it, and I like the tone that I get out of them. It's a little bit of a meatier, fuller, more powerful kind of tone than a maple or black locust bridge plate. So I just like the tone I'm getting out of it. So I got a long saddle, which is in the right place. So this 70s D28 has a lot of modifications to it. Those modifications are good if you own the guitar, you own the 70s D28 or 18, and you've been dissatisfied with it because it doesn't play in tune, you know, so what are you going to do? And if I'm going to scoot the bridge and drill holes, then I feel like, well, we should replace the bridge plate. And once you've replaced the bridge plate and scooted the bridge and you've made some modifications, now you might as well just go whole hog on the thing and do the tuners. The tuners will do the balance of the guitar. It'll make the guitar balance a lot better back here. It makes it a lot lighter. And it also makes your neck stiffer because there's less weight out on that. And if you ever shoot archery, you know that you can take a 500 shaft, and if you put an 85 grain tip in it, it's much stiffer shaft when you shoot than if you put a 145 grain tip in it or a 200 grain tip in it. You can tune the arrow shaft stiffness by the grain of tip you have on it. It's the same principle here. You've got that weight on the end of a 2-foot long stick, and so there's a lot of leverage going on there. There's a lot going on in the neck when you play the strings. The strings vibrate. They vibrate that neck. So by replacing the tuners with lighter ones, you stiffen the neck up. You can feel the vibrations in the neck more, especially when you fill that thing up with wood. You know, all these things just come together, make play. So the 70s, the value of the 70s is if you already have one, or you get one really cheap, or your grandfather, or your dad, or your uncle passed one on to you, and then what are you going to do? You know, those are the majority of the 70s that I work on. I bought my first 73. I bought that back in 1977, and I had it for all those years. So it was kind of, you know, a guitar that had been with me through a lot. So I already owned it. So I took that 70 sound and modified it up and made it into a more resonant, a more ringing, a lighter guitar, one that's a little bit more of a nod towards the pre-wars and that kind of thing. I feel that the value in the 70s is, first of all, by now, the wood's 50 years old. So this Indian rosewood back and sides is 50 years old. The Sitka spruce top, 50 years old. You know, it's getting some age on it. They've got finish cracks in them most of the time. And you can't overlook old wood. I feel that's nice. The 70s also can have, and this one does, have really good necks where they have a chunky, slight V, 1 11/16 neck. When I get a good 70s D28 or a D18 neck, it is so comfortable. And this particular guitar has just a superb neck for my hands with what I like to feel. I mean, you just can't get that kind of neck and anything else modern. You know, there's some good necks. I mean, D18 GEs and the Marquis with that rounded V, those are great necks. The Eric Clapton double out, 20 out, triple out, 28 EC has got a fabulous neck on it. But a lot of other necks, when we get to this 41, I'm going to talk about that. So the value of the 70s, they have really good necks with some modifications. You can turn this thing into a pretty good guitar. I feel like it stands up pretty good to that 41 Authentic. There's some differences in tone, yes, because the 41's got Madagascar back and sides, Madagascar rosewood back and sides. It's got a red spruce top on it. It's got the correct T-bar truss rod in it, and it's glued together entirely with hide glue. So there's a lot, there's a lot of things done right that I just can't quite do with the 70s. So I can't get it quite there. But considering that the 41 Authentic is like the epitome of a modern D28, I feel like this guitar stands up pretty good to it. It's got its pluses. What I like out of the 70s sound-wise, a modified one, is the character. The character. It's got a little bit of a dirtier tone to it than that one does. The authentic with the red spruce top is smoother, clearer, more defined. And Sitka spruce tops have a more dirty sound to it, gritty, if you will. Character. I hear character out of this guitar. I think the balance and the bass on this is really, really good. I like that bass. It's not woofy. It doesn't go woof, woof. But it's a clear, tight, punchy bass, which I like and which cut through really well. On most of my guitars, I think of the 50s a lot. I like that punchy, late 40s and early 50s sound. Even though the bracing is very different and everything, there's a certain punchy sound that they've got that I try to seek. I try to go after that more than the big woofy 1930s D28 sound, which is just it can boom out the mic. Boom, boom. It's great for live. It's great for rhythm playing and stuff like that, but it doesn't cut sometimes like a late 40s, early 50s would. So, I feel like this guitar is really well balanced. Again, character. It's got a lot of good character, especially on the rhythm. I like the rhythm sound of these. It's got the right balance between blend and cut. So when you do the cross picking stuff, I feel like that blends in just about right. It's got a good blend of the rhythm sound and the lead sound. It's easy to pop out. This particular guitar is set up wonderfully. Thank you very much. It just came out exactly right. The action's low, it's very comfortable. So that's the 70s D28. That's what I feel their value is. They're like a working man's guitar. It's pretty affordable to modify them if you already have one, if you can get one cheap, and they're worth saving. They've got so many problems stock that some people just poo-poo them. Oh, I wouldn't give $500 for it. Well, I would because I see the potential in it. Now it's going to take another $1,200 worth of work to get it really good, but that's not that bad if you think about it. I've told this story before. I mean, I race dirt bikes and things like that, and you go buy a $8,000 KTM, which now they're up to about $10,000 and $12,000, and the first thing most people do is go get the suspension worked on, which costs you $1,500, and get your radiator guards and your skid plate and mooses in the tires, and you're spending $2,000 to take that bike and turn it into a race-worthy machine, and you're never going to get a dime of that back. You put that same money into a 1973 D28, and you will get it back eventually, or you get a lot of it back, and you're not going to spend that much money, and you've got something like this that's going to appreciate in value. You'll have no problem. I have no problem turning around and reselling that guitar at any time. So the cost is kind of relative to things, and we're not even talking about boats or trucks. How many guys get a pickup truck and immediately go out and put $1,500 worth of wheels on it to make it look good? So it's all relative. So you get a 70s D28 and you put $1,200 worth of work in it, and now you got a really good guitar over there. So kind of relative. I understand if you don't have $1,200. Musicians can be kind of poor sometimes, but if you do, that's a good place to put it. All right, a D28 1941 authentic. This guitar's got open back tuners. It's got a lot of good stuff on it. It's got a T-bar truss rod in here, which is the way the originals were. Very strong. It doesn't shift around. It's a great truss rod. Oh, it has a red spruce top, Madagascar rosewood back and sides, which is good stuff. I mean, it's good wood. The originals were Brazilian. We can't get Brazilian anymore, not in good quantities. I feel like Madagascar rosewood is a very, very good substitute in its own right. So if we forget the fact that we're trying to, it's not as good as Brazilian, or, blah, blah, blah. And I always make this point here is don't go taking an authentic and comparing it to a 1941 D28, because it's not a 1941 D28. It wasn't made in 1941. The factory is different. The glue is different. The construction is a little bit different. It's not a 1941. We can never go back to 1941. I don't think I'd want to, because, World War II is still whipping around then. So what you have to do is take this guitar on its own merits. Okay? So how is this guitar right here as a guitar all by itself? Is it pretty good? Yeah, it's made out of Madagascar rosewood. It's got a red spruce top. It's got a long through saddle. It's got a T-bar. It's put together with hide glue. It's got open back tuners. All on its own. It's good. What I don't like about this guitar, small complaints, the neck is a little thin. I think they could have gone a little bit fatter on the neck profile. The 73 is definitely fatter. I've measured them with calipers. The 73 is about 20 thousandths of an inch fatter from front to rear, and it has a more pronounced V. This one is pretty thin. It tapers up to a pretty good taper. It's got a good taper as opposed to the 37 D28A, which has this super skinny neck and goes whoom into this huge fat taper. In fact, it has the most radical taper of any Martin guitar that I have yet to date measured, meaning it starts at the thinnest and goes to the fattest, and so your hand is going like this. It's not that it's not playable, but it's just like, that's not the neck I would choose if I was going to choose a neck. The 41, I think, is pretty good. It's about 85% of perfect, which is not bad, Especially if you put a capo on the second fret, then you're good. And I don't notice the thinness so much on this as I do some of the other ones, especially the 37. I noticed that right away, and then I noticed how fatter. It's a good neck. It's all right. It could be better, but it's all right. It's got a nice profile to it. It's got a good rounded V to it, so that's good stuff. So, what do I like about this guitar? I like the fact that it's pretty accurate representation of a 1941, even though I just said you have to take it on its own standalone value. If we go back and compare it to a replica of a 1941 D28, it's a fairly good replica. It's probably about 90%. It's probably about 90% accurate. So it's good enough to use as a model. I think the herringbone is pretty good. There's some small details on the herringbone that, you got to really know your real small details. The body shape is not quite correct for a pre-war D28, and lots of people have pointed this out, that it's just a little, the shoulders are a little off, and things are just a little off right here. The main thing that's off on this is the bridge. It should have a true vintage saddle slot, where if it wasn't glued in, you could push the saddle back and forth. You can do that on the 73 because I cut a true vintage saddle slot. What all the authentics have, as far as I know, all the authentics have is actually a long drop-in. And so if you take this saddle out, you're going to find little wings. It's got the wing, and then you're going to find a ledge where the saddle is actually sitting down inside the bridge. That's not accurate. Does it make any difference? It's a little bit less wood in between the saddle and the top. And what I decided from messing around with guitars for 25 years now is that when you cut the saddle slot deeper so that the bone or ivory of the saddle gets closer to the top, you get a harsher sound. You get more of the sound of the bone and less of the sound of the wood. So if you have a little bit more wood in between the saddle and the top, you get the sound of that bridge material. I've played around with this quite a bit on several guitars, and so, for instance, sometimes when I'm called to fix these, I take them out and I fill in the slot and I recut it. And sometimes I use a Brazilian rosewood or one of the hot rosewoods that I have left over from a bridge plate, and I put that into the slot and then I reroute again, and my fill is invisible underneath there. But I've got that saddle sitting on a piece of hot rosewood, which gives it a little bit of a different sound, a little bit of a different flavor in that sound. It's a very subtle thing, but I've experimented with the same guitar and the same saddle, cutting the slot deeper and deeper and deeper, and then bringing it back up again. And that's what I think, is that when you have a shallower slot, you end up with a little bit of a woodier sound. So that's where the authentic falls short if you go to comparing it to the original 1941 D28. But as a standalone guitar, it's great. It is, in my humble opinion, the state of the art, the epitome of a modern D28. Fully scalloped braces, the tone bars are scalloped, unlike that. But what differentiates this from the 1937A is that the X bracing is rear shifted. So the X bracing is 1.5 inches from the sound hole instead of forward. So that gives these rear shifted X's a little bit more of a punchier sound. That's comparable to the 73 D28 too, which is why I compare them, which is why I got a 41 when I used to have a 37 D28. I realized the 37 D28 just wasn't comparable to the 73s, and so it didn't give me the same kind of target. The 37's got the big neck on it. It's got wider bridge spacing. Does not have a popsicle brace. It's got forward shifted X. I mean, there's just lots of differences that I can't go there with the 70s. I can get pretty close to this on the 70s. This is more comparable. So that's why I have a 41 as a comparison. So I've come to really like that forward shifting. I did the 72 D18 and the 39 authentic D18, and it's the same deal. Skinny neck, forward shift, popsicle brace, etc. You know? Sound-wise, this has got just a little bit more of the boom because of the tone bars being scalloped. It's a richer, maybe warmer sound. I don't feel like it's quite as tight and punchy. I don't know how good this guitar would cut in a jam compared to the 73. I suspect it would be pretty good, you know. But what it's smooth, you know. I mean, it's a very pleasant sound. It's good to listen to. Listen to that on the 73. I think you should hear the grit and the dirtiness I'm talking about. You know, see what you think. So, anyway, we're just highlighting how the 73 modified, how does it stand up to the state-of-the-art modern D28. If you think it even stands up pretty good at all, that says a lot for what the modifications can do, because a stock 72 is an absolute dog. I can't even stand to play them anymore. Mostly because they're out of tune, you know. You pick them up and you strum, and you go up to the 3rd fret, and you're out of tune instantly, you know. So you got to fix that. And then I hear the dullness and the mud of the Indian rosewood bridge plate. And I have several videos out there comparing before and after on the 70s. You know, here's the 70s that comes in, and here's a good running 70s. Here's one that's had the bridge scooted and neck reset, frets, saddle. In fact, I'm not even sure I screwed the bridge on the one I'm thinking of. That bridge was in good location. But anyway, there's a stock 70s D28 on my channel, which is, all I did was a bone nut, neck reset, good frets, bone saddle, pins, just made it into a good running stock D28. And you can listen to that, and it sounds pretty good, but it doesn't have the punch, the clarity, the separation of the notes. It definitely still wanted to fall on the floor because of the tuners. So if you think that 73 is anywhere even close to this 41 authentic, then the modifications do a pretty good job. And it just shows you again what the two sound like. And so if you say, oh man, I just got to have this 39 or 41, that's just the sound. That's it. That rings, checks all the boxes, rings all my bells. Then you ought to sell your 70s and go get one of these. If you like that 70s sound and you say, that's got some stuff going on there, I like that. I like the age. I like the grit. I like the attitude. Then we should modify your 70s and get it there. So, all right, that's the purpose of this. And, what the heck, you get to listen to two cool guitars, because what's wrong with that, All right, see you later. Bye.